Yes, welcome in. Day 2 of Badgers camp in the books down in Platteville. And it was a wet day down in Platteville. A day after it was very, very hot. It was very, very rainy. And they still practice outside. They didn't really have any options, though, Jesse. Kind of had to be outside. Can't go inside the McLean Center if you're down in Platteville.
Yeah, even driving down there, I was wondering, really? They're going to practice outside? But there was a small window where it sort of stopped raining. But that is a tough day to be out there because it's hard to grip the ball. And so you can't fault someone for losing it when the weather is awful. But hey, when you get into November, October, there's going to be games like this too. So it's good for the team.
Did you just say we can't fault the guys for dropping the ball and not be
In
able
the
to hold on
practice,
to it? Or watching a ball like when you go back to throw it and it doesn't come forward with your hand because it was too wet to come forward with your hand. We don't blame that on anybody.
I blame it on the towels and the towels' inability to dry the ball between each play. And I don't know. Sure, we can blame if we want to.
I was going to say that's a very interesting answer on your part. It was wet, and there's no doubt about it. Was actually watching, or actually as I was walking out, Jake Renfro was walking by, no shoes on, and I'm like, dude, you got to find some shoes. He goes, those things need to dry out. Everything is absolutely soaking wet, and the center has to be as affected by it as anybody trying to snap it. And I don't know if they were getting the ball wiped down at before every single play, but yeah, it was not ideal conditions. But again, that's okay. It's practice, and you're going to have probably at some point have to deal with it because where you play, and you have to deal with the heat like you did yesterday. You're going to have to do that probably in the first couple games, and certainly when you go down to Alabama. And at some point, you're going to have to deal with rain and a wet ball, and that is what it is. So they actually had to deal with that today, and it presented some challenges. But plenty to get to as we got an opportunity to chat with Jordan Reid, the new wide receivers coach, and a few of the receivers as well after practice. Before we get started, just want to remind anybody who's listening, we do have a YouTube channel. So where you can watch all our interviews, watch all our shows, watch some practice video. Didn't have anything from today, but we'll have some more tomorrow. Go up to our YouTube page. It is the Camp YouTube. Just search that. You'll find it. Give us subscribe and watch us here if that is what you're interested in doing. So, Jesse, day 2. I think day 1, the first thing we talked about was Billy Edwards Jr. and the solid day that he had. I think maybe we need to start with the solid day that Danny O'Neill had it on day 2 instead.
Or yeah, I guess the play of the day is the one that, of course, Wisconsin has posted on its social media channels. A great play where Danny delivered a good ball down the left sideline, and Joseph Griffin Jr. dove for it and came up with it during a sequence where Danny had 3 back-to-back really good passes. Now, those are in skeleton drills. So again, like I mentioned on day 1, sometimes it's difficult to evaluate what's happening because there's no linemen, there's no pass rush, but still the guys are running the routes and you've got to deliver the ball in the right place. And I certainly think Danny had a nice day. And as I said on day 1, they're going to give Hunter Simmons a look too. He had a fair share of snaps with the second team offense as well. And it's good for the group to have some competition. But I think Danny did well for himself on day 2 and showed why he was a starter as a true freshman at San Diego State and some of the things he can provide. Because as we know, he can also get out on the run and make some plays with his legs, which is part of his game as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that it was like a 3-play stretch or a 3-play and 3 throws and 4-play stretch where he dropped a dime to JT Seagreaves down the sideline, had the one that you mentioned to Joe Griffin, which was probably it was a good throw. It was an amazing catch. Especially in those conditions. And then the wheel route to Darian Dupree out of the backfield beating Cooper Catalano just barely fit that win in there. Those 3 plays really certainly stood out for me. And it kind of, I didn't think he was amazing day 1. I think he had a really nice day on day 2. And that's not to say that Billy Edwards and the rest of everybody else did not. It just, Danny O'Neill stood out more so than the rest of the quarterbacks on day 2.
I will say this. My takeaway from day 2 was that it didn't feel as eventful as day 1. And in part, day one is eventful because you're looking at position groups. You're looking at who's playing where. That's a lot of what I end up writing about off of day one. What we talk about. Oh, who's occupying the left tackle role? Who's in the right guard role? And I know we're going to get to all that stuff, but they also felt like did more. And it's just a tougher day with the weather and with knowing you got another practice coming on Friday and Saturday and Sunday before you get a day off next week. Like, so I don't know that we saw as much, but there was still a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, there absolutely was. And the defense had a really nice day, and guys making plays that were making plays yesterday made plays today as well. A guy like Matthew Traynor, and we'll get to that. There were a few throws from Billy Edwards that I thought stood out, especially one down the middle, a dime to Jackson Aker. I believe that was in Skelly as well, where it's possible that the corner or the safety who was down there may have knocked him silly, but the throw was really good and it hit him right where it needed to be, and he held on. And I think that might have been Billy Edwards' best throw of the day, perhaps. One that we do have to mention is Milos. And this was during a young guys period, down just an absolutely beautiful rainbow of a ball that landed right on Langdon Nordgaard for a touchdown. It was, I don't know, like 40-yard touchdown. It was a perfect throw and an amazing catch. The coverage was tight. So among the other quarterbacks, I would say that one stood out for me.
I would agree. Again, not a ton of huge plays by the quarterbacks on day two, but they break it up sometimes where half the field are the older guys and the other half are the younger guys. And most of the time, my eyes are trained on the older guys because you want to know how's the depth chart shaking out in the two deep, and those younger guys may not see. But that was a play that absolutely stood out. Perfect ball.
Yeah. So there has been a lot of talk about the outside linebackers, whether they were going to be able to provide the type of rush that maybe we didn't see last year. And there's a lot of our conversations have been about whether it was yesterday, Mason Rager. We've talked about Daryl Peterson, Sebastian Cheeks. Well, all of them made plays today. Certainly think Daryl Peterson had his, I mean, it wasn't like it's day two. So I was about to say his best day yet. It's day two, which I guess is accurate, right? But he beat Lance Mason for a TFL. He also had a sack to blow up an Edwards drop back. So that was great. Sebastian Cheeks felt like was in the backfield a ton, had a sack, beat Davis Heinzen off the edge for a sack. And Mason Rager had a couple TFLs, including chasing down Trech Kekahuna on the edge. So all three of those guys kind of flashed today. And I know that's a little bit of a buzzword, but I think it works for them today.
Yeah, and of the three, Mason Rieger's ascension, I think, is just so important because he was that huge question mark. Didn't see him in spring while he was recovering. I know it's early, but man, he has positioned himself to play a ton, it feels like. Getting ample opportunity, you can't replace the experience that he has. And it feels like he is everywhere, all over the ball. And I know that when I was talking to him a couple weeks ago, this is obviously before camp started, there is this drive within him to prove what he's capable of because of everything that he's been through. The fact that he had to undergo another procedure in February after he got to Wisconsin, even though he'd already had like 4 or 5 knee procedures, and just wondering what his future was going to hold if he gets this opportunity. He said, I'm a big plan A guy. I believe that you need to go all in on the thing you're most passionate about. And if that doesn't work out, then you pursue plan B. Well, he's like, I'm going to ride football until the wheels fall off. And I maybe that is cliched or something, but I feel like you can see it in the way that he plays. Like every snap, he is just going 100 miles an hour. And at least early, you can see that playmaking ability.
Yep. And again, very early. Don't want to harp on that, but that's just what it is. So that certainly stood out. And for a second straight day, as I mentioned before, I thought Matthew Traynor, made plays. He had an interception in Skelly, and he also broke on closed so fast, and broke up a pass intended for Eugene Hilton Jr. It was a really, really nice play. The ball was a fastball, but he was even moving even faster and got there and broke up the play. So he has stood out both of these first 2 days. Ricardo Hallman broke up a quick screen that Vinny Anthony was trying to take care of, or was trying to get going on, and there was nothing there. So a number of defensive guys certainly standing out.
Yeah. Trainer, it feels like, obviously Austin Brown, Preston Zachman have earned the right to be out there. But if you want to put a third guy in there, it feels like Trainer is the guy that is slowly emerging. And I don't want to forget about Matt Young. He was around the ball pretty frequently in spring ball. Maybe we haven't called his name as much here through the first 2 practices, but those are the ones that you're looking at this point. And I mean, so far, I think the defense has made its fair share of plays. I don't know. The problem with evaluating all this is if one unit does really well, it means the other unit, you question, well, what does that look like against Alabama's of the world? But
Right.
again, we're not in full pads yet, and we'll have a better sense, I think, when you get to week 2 and everybody is really ramping it up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that because we saw again how smooth of a runner that Dilin Jones is, and yet, guys are not necessarily able to tackle him. We did get a few, not fights, but we got a few scrums. I think that's what I'll say. We got a few scrums today. Daniel O'Neal ran and went down, and it looked like he might have gotten taken down by somebody. And Grover Bortolotti was out there and did not take kindly to it and got after it. I do not know who the person was that ended up that he was upset with, but it was actually Daniel O'Neal that was pushed him away and led him away from what was happening there. There was also a situation where the offensive linemen were yelling at one of the edge guys for something. I should have asked Jake Renfro when we were walking what that was about because he was one of the guys that was yelling. But there was something there too. After I believe a guy got tackled on the edge. I don't know exactly what happened there, but there were a couple of scrums, which you like to see. There has been a lot of physical play here these first couple of days.
Yeah, of course, the cardinal sin is touching the quarterback. That's why they wear a different color jersey. On the other hand, when you have a guy like Danny who can roll out of the pocket and he was rolling around the edge and he was heading upfield, sometimes your instincts take over. It can be tough. Fortunately for all involved, everybody was fine. But that is the ultimate no-no. You touch him and you're a defender, you are going to get dudes in your face. But it's good. It's good competition early. And you mentioned Dilin Jones. I just so impressed with him, the way he strides and moves and how he's run. You're right, Zach. This is the challenge in evaluating individual players at a time when you don't know if it was going to be a 3-yard gain or a 13-yard gain because you're not going to lay into a guy. So did he juke a linebacker or did the linebacker get his arm around him enough to bring him down? But having said that, again, I know it is early, but it feels more and more like Dilin is taking advantage of the opportunity in a way that makes you think he'll be the number 1 running back. And that's not to say Darian Dupree is not going to get a heavy load, but Jones just looks like he's got some special qualities.
He absolutely does. And I think we talked about it yesterday, Cade, where exactly he fits in. I certainly think that they're going to get the ball into Darian Dupree's hands in the passing game. We saw a number of times today where you can get him out on the edge, and he's a little bit of a problem to deal with if you're a linebacker or even a safety to run with. And he's got that kind of ability, and that's kind of what we saw out of him in high school too, for sure.
Yes. One thing that I think has stood out to me about Darian, maybe, I don't know if this is, I just didn't expect it, but the power that he has, because you think, oh, he's a speedy guy. You're right. You look at his film at Mount Carmel and they got him the ball in space as a pass catcher, but that speed allows him to get to the second level and he lowers his pads and he is knocking dudes around. And I think that stood out to me today on one play in particular. You can see why this staff was so high on those two, why ultimately they didn't add bodies in that room. You have to stay healthy, but those two, it feels like, are going to get the lion's share of opportunities. And I don't know where Cade fits into this because, again, he is talented enough to contribute, but where do things fall if you believe that Dilin and Darian are your top 2 options?
Yeah, it's something that's going to have to play out for sure. The other thing that I wanted to get into before we talk a little bit of the wide receivers, because, again, we got to talk with Jordan Reid in that group, was the offensive line. It was the same first-team offensive line to start things, but it didn't stay that way.
Right. So Emerson Mandel was at right guard, and then, I can't evaluate line play, especially from a press box, but at a certain point, Kerry Kadinko started taking some reps at right guard, and very briefly, Colin Cubberly got some snaps there. So they're still clearly tinkering with what that rotation can be, and I imagine that's going to be something that continues here, at least through the first week, to figure out who really gives Wisconsin the best option.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing that stood out to me, at least in terms of where guys were, not reps or anything like that, but where guys were, when you talked about how they break up the older guys and the younger guys. And when it was the corners, one of the guys that had a really good spring was Kairos Gaines. He was with the young guys, but Jameer Scott was working with the older guys, and it appears that he at least is going to challenge. I mean, early, but he's going to have an opportunity, you would think, to work his way into the two deep on the outside like that. Very, very talented kid, and a bigger physical presence than what Wisconsin maybe has in a Deone Hill or Emilio Agard, or even a Ricardo Hallman for that matter, just in terms of hype, though Rico certainly size-wise looks completely different than when he showed up.
Yeah, well, when you consider that now Wisconsin's going into this season planning not to have Nizier Forkerine, and we should mention, saw him briefly this time. I think it was with the kind of the 2-3 group, and that was, not long. But you're going to be elevating some of those younger guys. And I mean, I wouldn't rule out Skanes for this too. I think he got a fair number of reps in some of that 11 on 11. Again, a lot of that are the reserves playing together, but they have a bunch of talent in the secondary in general with these last couple of recruiting classes. And we'll see whether any of that will materialize this season. I think some of it will be dependent on health, obviously, because very clearly you've got Ricardo Hallman's going to get 98% of the snaps there. I mean, if he's healthy, you want him out there. Jameer Latimer, the second, continues to play in the slot. So on the outside, it's Agard and it's Deone Hill. And are you going to go down to whatever your fourth guy is? Maybe.
Right. One guy I wanted to mention, because he just popped out on a couple of plays, Remington Moss, another one of their recruits, had a pass breakup and also then stuffed a wide receiver screen during a portion of the practice where they had the young guys going against the first team. And so he had a couple of nice plays there for the, I guess you would say the third team, or maybe even lower than that. So he's an interesting guy. And also, obviously, can we call him a legacy?
His cousin was Brent Moss. Might as well.
Yeah. I don't know if we can call that, but either way, has some history. Rest in peace. All right, let's jump into some of the wide receiver talk as we got to chat with, as I said, Jordan Reid, the wide receivers coach. Would you say he's got some energy?
I'd say he's extremely excited to be here, and you can feel it.
Yeah. You got the opening question with him, and it was more of a general question about why was it why what was I'm sorry, what was the question? It was why should receivers want to be here?
No, it was more a question about just your impressions of the variety of ways in which the wide receivers can get the ball. And I know I was curious about a lot of the opportunities they've had in the backfield, but it ended up being more of a general question about all the ways they can be used.
Yeah.
Man, if I'm anybody that's playing the receiver position in this offense at this university, I'm more than thrilled and excited for the opportunity. Just the volume that we have in terms of an offense, the different ways, first level, second level, and third level. I'm excited, and it really embodies what an NFL offense is. And we mean that, not just saying, hey, you're going to run 4 different routes on the route tree and be great at those. Well, we're going to ask you to run a multitude of routes from the outside, in the slot, jets, reverses, sweeps, naked, all these different type of things. And I think that's going to be the fun part about this offense. And if I'm a guy that has the ability to win at all 3 levels and specialize in those things, I'm more than thrilled and more excited. So I'm excited with the way that the guys are taking this in, and it's a lot on them. I'm not going to be beside that fact, but if you allow excuses, there'll be excuses. So but it's exciting. It's definitely exciting time from that standpoint.
So that was his comments on he's got a lot of options, right? And how do you keep them all happy?
You never keep them all happy. I think we've heard wide receivers coach say that over the years, but you also earn your opportunities, as cliche as it is. I think we have a general sense of who that top group is. It's going to be Vinny Anthony, Trech Kekahuna, Jaden Ballard. You'll see some Chris Brooks, and you've got other guys vying for whatever that next spot could be. Tyrell Henry certainly can be a key guy for them in the slot. I think he can also line up out wide if need be. You mentioned the play that Danny O'Neal had where Joe Griffin had the catch of the day, but Eugene Hilton Jr., as we've talked about a lot there's a lot of talent there. But as we know, if you've got an offense that's predicated on the run, being physical, how many opportunities are there going to be for that fourth or fifth guy? I feel like I say that every year when you're talking about Wisconsin's wide receivers. But I think the difference this year is the variety of ways that Jeff Grimes is going to get these guys the ball. And I know that some of this is install. So I was talking to Chris Brooks after practice, and that was one of the things he was mentioning. Like, they are putting a lot in now so that if they get into a situation where they want to run it, they can do it. You may see something more frequently now that you're not going to see in a game type situation because you want to rep it and you want to get really good at it. But obviously he wants to get the ball in his playmakers' hands. And I think that's been one of the most exciting things in watching this offense are how many guys are getting touches all over the field.
Yeah. And they're getting the ball in different ways. And you said some of the things that we've seen, we may not see in the season. One of the things we saw during that spring showcase, so I feel okay talking about it, is, the sweep, the jet sweeps, right? The ways that they're getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And we mentioned it yesterday. The only thing I don't want to see in the season is running that into the short side of the field. Again, not a football guy in terms of X's and O's, but it just doesn't make any sense to me at all, especially when you've got speed. That said, they have a bunch of different guys there. I asked about Joe Griffin and what he would have to do to potentially get some more time. And it sounded more, as he perhaps did with your question, Jordan Reid kind of answered the question that he wanted to answer and just talk about some of the competition within that room.
At the end of the day, and it's the first thing we stress to the room, like, if you look around this room and you stare at everybody within there, like, everybody thinks they deserve the ball, and everybody's got talent in some way, shape, or form. And that's the beauty of it. And I told him, like, hey, everybody's brothers in this room. Everybody's got siblings in this room. You love your brothers, all right? You love them dearly and truly. But also at the same time, how many times do you compete with your brothers and sisters as well? It's the same mantra here. And at the end of the day, guys got to be ready to be pushed by other guys. And, Joe Griffin's a pivotal point right now. Just, okay, how much better can I get? How much more can I learn the system? How much can I continuously show? And I think guys that are able to learn the system at a faster rate are able to showcase their skills at a better rate as well. And so just continually pressing on. Consistency is the matter at hand.
Consistency is the matter. We've seen him make some great plays. We've seen him make ridiculous catches. It's just the consistency of it. And that's a huge part of this game. Like, anybody can flash, right? Anybody can make a play. It's about making plays, plural, on a regular basis. But his experience and his size is not necessarily something that they have a ton of out there right now, right? I mean, Jaden Ballard is experienced and he's a bigger guy, but he hasn't played a ton of football. Like, he's late in his career. He has not played a ton of football. Joe Griffin's played a ton of football in his couple years at BC. Sat out last year, but I think he provides something that maybe they don't have right now.
Yeah, you can't deny the numbers that he had at Boston College, and kind of forgot about him last year because he didn't play. But I think it's a spot for him where it's, who are you going to ultimately steal reps from? Just because of where guys are positioned at this point. I mentioned who we feel like the top group is. Well, if you're not in that group, who are you going to take reps away from? But again, if you flash, if you make plays like that and you can stack those up, hard to keep you off the field. So at least Wisconsin has some options, but we'll see who ultimately is going to be a part of that rotation.
It's tough. All right. Wanted to hit on Trech here because you wrote a story about him one time, right? Like about how he almost ended up at the airport, was on their way to the airport and then came back. I remember something about that. I don't know. But I'm kidding, of course. You wrote about everything about him and how he almost ended up somewhere else. And then Jeff Grimes and everybody brought him back. And we heard from Jeff Grimes. He talked about that on Monday. But Trech has been, as I said yesterday, as involved as he's ever been before. And this is something that I think fans should be excited about, how they can get the ball in his hands and how he can make people miss. He is football first and football all the time. It feels like, that is his passion. And that's essentially what Jordan Reid said. He is just a different type of wide receiver and the exact type of wide receiver that they want.
Man, play speed, man. It's a lightning in the bottle right there. That's the fun thing about a kid like that, man. Just different ways that you can be able to utilize that. That's going to be the fun thing about it. But, definitely missed that. Obviously didn't have that in the springtime. But being able to have that out here, man, just the play speed that kid plays with, man, there's no hesitation. And the one thing we emphasize is our own hesitation kills. And he does not flinch by any stretch, no matter what you ask him to do, and it stood out. And honestly, ever since he's been back, other guys take on to him. They're like, well, I got to go. And that's how it's supposed to look. I got to embody that myself, too. And so it's been a blessing to have him out there.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And then we got to hear a little bit more of like what kind of stood out to Jordan Reid about him, and that is the fact that he shows up before anybody else. Like Jordan Reid will be getting to the breakfast and Trech already be there. And we asked Trech about that, and it's like, yeah, I get up at whatever time it was. I do a little meditation, do a little Bible, and then I get my day going. I'm a morning person. And so I don't know what that's like, me being personally. That's not me, but he is committed to this and committed to being the guy, especially after the guy that has been in his spot the last 2 years, Will Pauling, is now at Notre Dame. And he said, what?
No, go ahead.
What he said was, I decided to come back here even before Will jumped into the portal. It was going to be the best man wins. That's what Jeff Grimes told him. And we would have seen exactly what that would have entailed. Now, I know a lot of people at Notre Dame are excited about Will Pauling and some of the things that he's done, and we know what Will Pauling was, especially his first year here, and how good he was. But I'm excited for Trech to get more than just a few opportunities a game.
Very much so. I think one of the notable things Jordan Reid said when he was talking about Trech is basically when all that stuff went down, which he was referring to, Trech enters the portal. He's about to take those visits. He comes back, has the talk with Jeff Grimes, and decides he's going to stay. From that point onward, he has maybe, I don't want to say a different mentality because he's always been this way, but understanding the opportunity that he has in front of him now and being all in on that opportunity. You're right. That's what he told me last month, is like he made the decision at the time when Will Pauling was still on the roster. He didn't know that Will was leaving. Will had called him like maybe a week later or something like that and informed him that he was on his way out. But now that you don't have that, Trech is going to get a ton of snaps. We've seen his explosiveness, his playmaking ability. The best version of him came against Purdue, obviously, but I think he can have games like that much more often. And we saw it briefly even after he came back from the injury 2 seasons ago. So it's how do you get the ball into the hands of your playmakers, which sounds super obvious, but he has certainly gotten more opportunities early this camp that make you believe how big of a focal point he'll be in this offense.
I mean, look, he is a smaller guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to be able to throw the ball, jump balls to him, right? That's not going to be who he is. He's going to be a guy that it's going to be either short routes or maybe a little bit more longer developing routes where he has the ability to run away from guys, but that it's not going to be stuff where you're asking him to out jump a guy. It's get the ball in his hands and let him be an athlete. And I feel like that's kind of what we've seen so far in camp. And throughout, outside of the last 2 years, throughout the last 20 or so, we've seen guys really be able to have success on those reverses. David Gilreath, go all the way back to David Gilreath. He ran for over 100 yards, I think, against Indiana one year. Like that, they have the wide receiver. If they have the wide receiver that's going to be able to do it, let him have a chance. And I think Trech is going to get the ball in him in a bunch of different ways, but especially behind the line of scrimmage.
That would be my expectation here as well. And why wouldn't you do it with a guy like that? See what you can get out of it.
Absolutely. So anything else you want to hit on from day 2 of camp? Any stories coming up that you're going to be writing that you want people to know more about it at Badger Connect? Oh, you know what we do need to talk about? We talk about the Badger Bites video from today, do we not? Because you got Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas sitting down with Ryan Malman and watching some tape. And I thought it was a great video. And Joe doesn't just say stuff to say stuff. He's going to be pretty darn clear about what he's saying, and it's going to mean something, and he's not going to pull punches.
Yeah, so we got Joe Thomas in the film room in the offensive line meeting room with Riley Malman, obviously 2 tackles, and Joe just went to work. I think what's cool about it is he can pretty much say anything, and because he's Joe Thomas, the greatest offensive lineman in football history, you can say one of. I'll just go ahead and say since he 2-time All-American, Outland Trophy winner, 10 straight Pro Bowls to start his NFL career, never missed a snap. No offensive lineman in NFL history has ever had the 10 straight Pro Bowls. Whatever he says is amazing. And of course, that's what it was. And, so they watched some of Riley's film, and including some teams that they're going to play this year. Like the very first play in that video is watching Alabama, who they're going to see very soon. But Joe talks technique, and then they also watch some of the grainy old VHS footage of Joe Thomas just destroying dudes at the end. But so they went for about an hour, and we ended up with 30 minutes in the video. But he is definitely willing to critique performance, and if anybody can do that, it's him. But I thought it was really cool, and kind of bridge the gap between the older Badgers with these newer guys. And I will say this: it's the first of hopefully more of these Badger Bites videos. We've got another one lined up, hopefully in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'll give that a plug. I think it's the coolest one we've done so far.
Yeah, so go check it out, badgerconnect.com. Joe has spent a lot of time with the offensive lineman this year or this offseason. I know Ben Barton was talking about that, how he, because he was saying J.J. Watt came in, but yeah, the offensive lineman spent a ton of time with Joe Thomas, which can't hurt. Right? Like he's not an offensive line coach, but as you mentioned, I don't think it's really, honestly, Jesse, I don't think it's really debatable. He is the best lineman in Wisconsin history. And I know there are some other names you could put out there, but just based on what he did at Wisconsin and then what he went and did in the NFL, I don't think it's he's got a lot of credentials to go along with what's in his mind. And people, as you said, probably have to listen to it.
Yeah, I mean, I no doubt greatest in Wisconsin history, maybe in football history.
Maybe I misheard you. I thought you said. Yeah,
oh no,
okay. Maybe I misheard you.
Sport. Yeah, I think
that might be a bit much, but I put him up there.
Yeah. Also, he is an offensive line coach. I don't care what anybody says. He may not be employed currently as an offensive line coach. I know he did it in Europe for the team in Munich. And I think I told this story, but when I was talking to him last fall for that story about basically what wasn't going right for the offense after some of those failures and the shotgun, and he gave this expansive answer about what he would do in those situations. I remember posting it, but it was like 4 screenshots long because it was just a great answer about what they ran, what his philosophy was, how they basically converted all but one the entire season. And it was because the quarterback slipped and fell. He knows ball. And again, I'm biased, but I encourage everyone to check out that video if you're a subscriber at Badger Connect. And if you're not, now's a great opportunity to get on board because we're just getting started.
Ton of football content coming, ton of basketball content coming, ton of volleyball content coming. Can we just say there's a ton of content coming?
I would say that's fair. If it weren't the case, it would be problematic as the director of content.
That would be a bit of an issue. You want to say hi to Hank?
Hey, Hank.
Yeah.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Jesse says hello. All right. We will be back. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach. Talk soon.
All right. There he is. Jesse Temple from Badger Connect. You've been listening to The Camp.